Today we have with us Mr. Jason Garbis and Mr. Eric Johnson. Since RSA, what do you think what has changed?
Well, to be honest with you, I haven't been, diving in so much on the AI controls. I've been pretty busy with the zero trust focus.
You need to have multiple human beings involved in that process now because you can't rely on an email or an SMS or something like that.
What are the key takeaways from the RSA video? Hello, a very warm welcome from RSA. We are recording live. Today we have with us Mr. Jason Garbis and Mr. Eric Johnson. Jason needs no introduction. He's like the pioneer in Zero Trust. He's the author of the Zero Trust Enterprise Security book and has been featured in numerous Zero Talk discussions. And we have Eric with us. He's a pioneer and he has been working great in the CSA world as well as guiding a lot of Zero Trust working groups initiatives. So it's been my pleasure to have you both with me.
Thank you, Taha.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
So my first question to you, gentlemen, what do you think about the Zero Trust adoption, especially when it comes to security leaders? We have seen Zero Trust has been normally the talking point of most organizations, but we have not seen that going into the actual implementation phase. But since RSA, what do you think, what has changed?
I think it's the awareness, I think, has really grown. There is such incredible awareness of Zero Trust as an important strategy, as a trend in the industry, but we're still early days in terms of actual adoption and implementation. So I have a lot of conversations with security leaders who are, okay, we're interested in Zero Trust, or we're about to kick off a Zero Trust initiative. How do we actually do this? And that turns into a really good set of conversations around a structured, step-by-step way to do it, challenges to look out for, and best practices around how do you engage and make sure your organization is ready, and how do you move from there.
Right. And this, continuously evolving both the threat landscape and the technology landscape. Of course, as we all know, AI is, coming on strong, and that complicates the conversation somewhat. It adds a lot more elements to it, both in terms of how can AI be leveraged for implementing security and operating secure environments, and also how can you leverage Zero Trust to secure AI and secure your data.
Nice. So talking about AI, we have seen like AI has been a talking point in RSA, and there's a lot of security solutions coming up, especially with LLMs and agents coming in. So what do you think in terms of Zero Trust approach, or as in the framework? Does anything is change if somebody has to apply Zero Trust on the AI solution versus a non-AI solution? What has changed?
You want to start?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I mean, AI, I think, is certainly in the long term, it's going to change many, many things. And I think that there's been clearly a big shift toward vendors talking about AI capabilities within their products.
Right.
I think you can also view it as very incremental, right? In some ways, you could say, well, an AI system is just another resource on the network. In some sense, you could say it's really not that different from a web UI or a database. You still need to control access to it. You need to understand who has access to it. And it's also an entity in its own right. If it's making API calls or doing searches for data or retrieving data, then that's in some ways just another non-human identity that needs to be managed. But in some ways it's very different because these things are non-deterministic, and you're losing so much visibility and control of data that it does magnify the problem and highlight the need to understand very deeply who's using this, how are they using it, what data are they putting in, and how could that potentially be misused.
Nice. So talking about like AI just a software, right? We have seen there are some frameworks coming in for AI, especially from NIST, like risk management frameworks coming in. And there are also some security standards coming in from CSA, which is like the STAR methodology.
AI controls matrix.
So what do you think, what is the go-to standard or the framework if you have to follow like the NIST standard or CISA, like the CSA controls? How do we structure this approach? What do you think on this?
Well, to be honest with you, I haven't been, diving in so much on the AI controls. I've been pretty busy with the Zero Trust focus, but we do see a lot of concern among, organizations, information owners about a lot of trepidations about putting their data into LLM and AI environments, and how much confidence can you have, what assurance can you have that the data is going to be kept secure and not going to be compromised. And so we're doing some research on how Zero Trust can help with all of that for sure. And I think the work that NIST and the CSA is doing, where a control framework can only help with that. It's all based on sound, security principles, many of which are adopted as part of Zero Trust. Least privilege and deny all, permit by exception, log and monitor everything. A lot of stuff in Zero Trust that isn't that new. Really.
Yeah. I think that's very sensible. Is that the frameworks are going to consolidate and utilize security best practices and controls that we know and love in some cases, right? There's no brand new control that someone just made up that's specific to AI, right? But what AI does is it really, because you have this such incredible rapid adoption by enterprise users, is now you have a crisis on your hands in some way of, okay, now we really need to understand where is this data going? What are we using to train it on? Is it not inside our data center? Are we using a cloud-based AI that has been trained with proprietary data? What's happening to all that? It's, I think, bringing things to a head where now the security teams say, okay, we really need to get some controls in place around this. And legal teams too around, okay, what are our compliance obligations here? How do we make sure that the terms and conditions for AI system A is okay with what we're doing, and people aren't using AI system B.
Nice, well said. And one of the interesting things, what I was a part of a panel yesterday, where Anthropic, somebody from Anthropic, he's saying that when they're adapting AI and when they're applying zero trust, they're actually starting up from that NIST framework and then taking it to the CSA control. So one which is like the framework, whatever framework you're using, it has to be applied the same way, but just think of as a software, right? And then you can take it from there towards the CSA control, like the STAR controls. That is how I think we should do it, right? So now moving on in terms of the quick wins. So for example, if I'm a big enterprise organization, right? If I want to go towards the zero trust journey and I have all sort of applications running into my network. Now, as a CISO, what do you think? What should be my quick win that I should be looking at if I have to go to the next iteration when it comes to implementing zero trust?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so are you asking about utilizing AI for improved security? Or, okay. I think it's clearly, first of all, looking at the set of vendors and tools that you have in place. And essentially, every vendor has new AI capabilities. And what does that mean, right? Really what it is advanced machine learning or analysis, pattern recognition, and recommendations. And what it's going to be, some of these tools are going to be really good at is helping your human users deal with the scale and the volume of data that is impossible for a human being to understand. Right. So the AI system is going to help surface that, identify patterns, and then bring to the attention, to the human being's attention, hey, look at this one thing, not the other 99,000 things.
Yeah, exactly. And that can apply at different points in the whole system's life cycle, depending on where the organization is strong or weak. So, you can leverage AI to help with asset inventory or determining where's my critical assets, or from there to, log analysis. Zero Trust says log everything, but who has the staff to look at all those logs and let alone correlate them and that sort of thing. And then deep diving, and once you detect an incident, helping to do the forensic analysis and remediation and all of that. So, AI can be powerful and help with all of that.
No, I think it's really going to help security teams be more effective and used in the right way. And I think we have so much data and telemetry coming in now that we need something like this.
Yeah, exactly.
So when business thinks about adapting zero trust, they are mainly concerned on the key performance indicators and the business KPIs. So in terms of if we are adapting zero trust, in terms of the business KPIs like ROI and return on investment and how much we are hitting the compliance, what do you think? What is the sweet spot between scaling zero trust and ensuring that we are getting the performance needed?
I think the question of metrics is something that's going to be unique for each organization.
Right.
When we work with enterprises, there's always a really interesting conversation up front of what does your zero trust program look like? What are the expectations in terms of reporting and metrics and dashboard, et cetera? And is the business focused on improving user efficiency or on showing some sort of potential financial ROI, reducing the volume of incidents, things like that. So it has to be tailored for the specific organizations.
Right. And I kind of think about it being ROI is one angle to go down. That could be a tough sell or a tough row to hoe. Yeah. But if you look at the organization and say, what are your critical assets? What are your critical functions? And what are the things you really need to keep operational so that you can stay up and running? If you're a critical infrastructure owner or a bank or financial institution, what's the cost of not doing something? Okay, I look at zero trust and security. It's like an insurance policy, and having a plan to be resilient so that you can at least have your minimum viable set of operations stay up and running. And you look around in the news, the people that fail to do that, it's like, do you want to be like that guy? Do you want to be in the news, or do you want to stay out of the news?
Yeah, I think that there's always preventing bad things from happening, which you can't really measure, right? But you can measure things that have been happening, like security incidents or actionable things to follow up. Things that happen in
Right.
volume, and you can show, hey, this is going from 100 a month to 10 a month, or the amount of help desk tickets that access for the help desk tickets, you can measure that's going down. So we're introducing new efficiency into the organization.
Yeah. One of the things that stood out for me is when I implement zero trust is that zero trust can actually reduce the cost for you. So you know exactly where you need to set the controls in, and you can take an iterative approach from there. But since once you have the continuous visibility of the network, you know where security controls really matters, and that is how you can scale and you can get the best ROI of it. So like moving on, talking about critical infrastructure and how zero trust can help. We have started this new working group like in CSA for cellular security as well. Which is really like picking up. So in your view, we have seen like attacks like Salt Typhoon happening, and there is also a threat to the critical infrastructure as well. So how do you see zero trust can help in trying to avoid some of those attacks?
Well, I think it definitely can help a lot with keeping critical infrastructure up and running, and like the resilience aspects we're just talking about. Simple things like the microsegmentation and limiting the blast radius and being ready for the fact that you will have breaches. But when you do, you limit it, you can jump on it quickly, you can respond quickly to help keep the organization up and running. And that's particularly important in critical infrastructure spaces where it's really all about the uptime, about the resilience and the availability.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's, as we all know, there's so many security and technical constraints associated with those environments. Older technology deployed using insecure network protocols. So the fact that so many zero trust systems for that space are deployed as network overlays, so they can be in front of and kind of around the critical infrastructure components and act as a hard network policy enforcement point is really what's needed. And there's constraints for those environments compared to standard enterprise IT environments, but the zero trust systems that are most effective there, can bring this identity awareness and device awareness and support all the necessary network protocols.
So there is one thing I would like to share. The impact of zero trust has been reaching the telecom standards organization as well. So now in their new standards, they are looking at zero trust more seriously. And now what they are thinking is, as cellular is moving towards more open RAN and distributed network architectures, and towards 6G as well, so all those complex architectures and cloud native like systems, zero trust is the solution for them. This is something which is coming down from the telecommunication standards organization as well, which is like good to see that like other industries are also adapting it as they are seeing the results as well. So moving on from the critical infrastructure to something like RSA, we have been seeing a lot of good talks happening. So both of you, like which of the talks you remember which really stood out for you? What's been happening around here?
There's definitely a lot about AI, and I think that there's some really interesting sessions around just kind of resetting or level setting around, look, AI isn't magic. It's a combination of advanced algorithms that have been developed and a much larger volume of data analysis and data processing speeds that we had in the last 5 years. And that's really pushed this much richer set of capabilities, which really has exploded in the last year and a half. So it's brought to the forefront new technologies that we're seeing that used and abused. And I think it definitely has made things harder for security organizations. So there are startup vendors trying to help with specific aspects of AI, and it's unfortunately kind of a whole new dimension that CISOs and security leaders have to deal with, especially on the anti-fraud side and as well as the data security side.
Yeah, exactly. And also the fact that the threat actors are leveraging AI adds a little more of urgency and makes things a little more interesting, for sure.
One of the things which really actually struck me is there was a panel discussion going on where we have like Meta and Cloud and like Microsoft, all those guys were sitting, and there was a question came up from the audience that, hey, we are making AI so much open source, and we have a lot of security for which we are using open source libraries. So if the bad guys are using those all those technologies, so how do you defend against those attacks? What is that strategy will you adopt, right? So there was this answer which I really like is, so the industry is actually still figuring out. We are not yet there, but it's more about making your processes right and doing it more like due diligence, and whatever you are doing, it should follow a standard pattern that you are following all the security checks there, the processes are right, and that's how you can prevent those attacks coming in. So what do you think on that in terms of should we rely on mostly open source tools, or should we like develop something of our own in terms of protecting against AI threats?
I'm not really deep enough on the specifics of the AI models to say, open source versus proprietary or anything like that. I think the one big decision that organizations have to make when they're looking at using these systems is, are they running it in-house or are they using a cloud-based service? Because clearly, in one case, you have the ability to keep the data on your premises, but it's more complicated. You have to do it yourself. And you don't necessarily have access to the same set of capabilities in the models. And the inverse is, it's a lot easier, but now the data is out of your building, and you've got to rely on legal terms and conditions, but also to recognize that these providers will be attacked, they will be breached, that data will be stolen, so you have to be careful about what you're putting outside of the building.
You're delegating responsibility to them under the shared responsibility model, which will definitely introduce some risks. So you got to do that whole supply chain risk management factors in and all of that. But I mean, if you're super, super sensitive information, say you're an intelligence agency or the DoD or something like that, you're not going to be putting it out there in some cloud environment, like you mentioned, the self-hosted option.
Right. But even I was talking to a financial services, like a pretty big bank, and they didn't want to take all their log data and ship it up because that log data showed exactly what their internal infrastructure was like, and by implication, what the weaknesses were.
Yes.
So I want to talk about the process a little bit though, because that really is an important point that you brought up. Is when you're looking at preventing fraud or preventing bad things from happening, it's human processes that are going to be the backstop here, where you can no longer have one person allowed to initiate a payment transfer or something like that, even if it's relatively small for your organization, right? It's not, hey, we're sending $10 million here, but it's, hey, I got an email that said, pay the caterer $20,000 for this event. Okay, I'll do that. You need to have multiple human beings involved in that process now, because you can't rely on an email or an SMS or something like that. You need to rely on much more trusted systems like, okay, boss, I'm going to pay the caterer, but you need to open a service desk ticket because we have to MFA in. It's a little bit of a headache, but unfortunately, that's the world we live in.
Yeah, true. And what we have also seen is enterprises, especially like the employees, they are relying too much on the AI to solve their problems. And one of the best way to protect against like AI malfunctioning or getting poisoned is to not use excessive AIs. So in the view of that, in terms of like the best practices, anything which you recommend which can help organizations to remain secure in this
right. I mean, you still have to do your basic blocking and tackling and basic, AI isn't going to replace the need for all of that. And one of the things we've seen in looking at talking to different organizations and doing our research around Zero Trust, that the Zero Trust effective program involves both a lot of organizational aspects, readiness, awareness, training, building the culture, and technical aspects. I know Jason does a lot of work with all of that, right?
Yeah, you have employees who are just starting to use AI systems willy-nilly, and in fact, pretty much any software system you use now has some AI capabilities, so you can't stop this from happening. What you can do is, there are some technical controls, they're not great, it's a little bit of a whack-a-mole because you're always chasing this. So education is a big part of it, and having the backing of your legal organization. So you get legal to look at the terms and conditions for these various systems, and then you can put the hammer down a little bit as a security leader and say, okay, you can use servers A, but you have to use our enterprise account because they give us certain data controls around that. You can't use service B because it's simply not allowed, and you can use service D with this mode or this model.
Right.
And be aware of what data you're using that service for. Don't put our whole customer database up there so it can tell us how to market better to them, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Now, in terms of like governance model and like regulations coming up with some of the frameworks, right? So, where do you see the regulatory bodies are in terms of adoption of Zero Trust and like coming up with some like innovative controls as part of their governance model? Where do you think the industry is at in terms of setting up the governance models?
I don't know. I don't know how these frameworks are going to turn themselves into something that's practical. I mean, I imagine that there will be some regulations that come out. Obviously, those will be sector-specific or country-specific.
Right.
Those always take a really long time. So I think it's incumbent on enterprises to be proactive around this and say, okay. And there's some good templates out there from reputable organizations around, AI usage policy, acceptable usage policy, those kinds of things.
some reference models and things like that. Yeah, there's both regulatory governance and then internal governance. And sometimes the internal one is more important, really, to set your own rules based on, because you know better than some regulator where your sensitive data is, what your real risks are, what the potential impacts are, right? And have a proactive program for, managing implementation of whatever the technology is, whether it's zero trust or AI or all of the above, so that you set the general direction, set the general tone, but then also delegate responsibility back to whether it's different lines of business, different business areas, who know their problems and their risks better.
All right, great. So now moving on to our last segment. Just to close on to this, what are the key takeaways from in your view from the RSA event, which you want to take from here, from the time you spent here?
I think there's a lot. First of all, I think the energy level is great. The conference is really full, really crowded, and it feels like people are excited about this stuff. And I think AI has maybe a lot to do with that, but a recognition that it's bringing us new capabilities. It's also bringing us a lot more problems. So we all need to get on our game to get ahead of it.
Right. Yes. And it does seem like people are, increasing the level of understanding of AI and its capabilities and risks is increasing. There's been more awareness around it, and less of, what is this new thing? And people are starting to get their heads around it a little better, I think. But and also though that there's still a lot of interest in and need for security strategies like zero trust to help with it. Like I said, you still have to do all the basic blocking and tackling, and you still got to run your business, and AI isn't going to do all that for you.
One of the key takeaways from me is from myself when I came here like last year, was like most people don't know much what they're doing in terms of like the booths and everything. They're just selling and making sure that who is winning the race. But now things are getting more practical, and they understand what the customers are asking them, so they have come more prepared this time. And especially I like the startups which are coming in here. I really like some of the solutions which are really practical, because one of the things which I really wants to see is like practical use cases. Like, hey, like everybody is selling like AI, but what problems you are solving? So that is something which I have seen here in this conference, which I really want to share with our audience. Okay, guys, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to have you both with me. It's been a pleasure. I hope you have a great time in RSA here, and all the best in your career.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.